we're going to take a look at creating a basic application in Visual Basic. So we're going to start out by opening up Visual Basic. It is indicated by the VB icon. So when I click on it, it opens up the startup page for Visual Basic. In the startup page, you can see recent projects if you have any. You probably have an empty page here right now. Now, the listing here will come and go as you create your projects, but we can find them in different places on your computer. So we're going to click on New Project. By clicking on New Project, it opens up a GUI itself, a pop-up window. By default, it should say Windows Form Application. If not, click on Windows Form Application. But before I leave this window, I'm going to name my GUI project. So this is going to be the overall name of my GUI project. I'm going to name it Hello World. I'm going to call it Hello World, no spaces in the naming of the basic project. And then I'm going to click on OK. We can see that a basic window appears with an empty form. This will be my GUI template right here. I can change the size of my GUI using the sizing handles. In a moment, we'll learn how to add some of the tools. Let's take a look at the tab up here. You can see some of the basic tab functionality that we have that you see in other software. Then the toolbar appears down here as well. So there are three icons that we're going to focus on in this tutorial. The first one is the Solution Explorer. The Solution Explorer is related to this viewing window. I can pin it shut. Right now it is pinned open, but if it would go shut or disappears, I can find it by clicking on the Solution Explorer icon. The next icon is the Properties window. That is related to this one down here. I use this very often throughout creating my GUI, so this one stays pinned open for me. If, again, it goes missing, you can have it reappear through the Properties icon up here. The next most important one is the toolbox itself. The toolbox will create for me all the different things that I want to add for the functionality of my GUI. I can also get to the toolbox over here. It's to the left-hand side. When I hover over the button, you can see a whole list of items appear for the things that we can add to our GUI. So the first thing we're going to add to the GUI is a label. So while my toolbox is open, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to double click, and I'm going to come over here to my GUI. We can see that a label appeared in my GUI. Another way to add a tool to the GUI is to click and drag. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag over to my form a label. You can see that it renamed itself. So I have label 1 and label 2. Once I've added a tool, I can copy and paste the tool. So I can copy, right click, and paste the tool onto my form. Now, if I click on label 1, we can see over here in the Properties window, label 1 has appeared as the main component. If I click down, we can see I have a form. So I have 4 properties now related to my form. Here's the form itself. I have label 1, label 2, label 3. As I click on each one, the properties associated with each of the components will appear. If I click on label 1, the list of properties changes. If I click on label 2, the list will change again, but it will be the same as label 1. So let's take a look at label 1. I'm going to highlight label 1. You can see that it highlights in the form itself. Now, right now, label 1 is not able to be resized by default like I could on my form. A newer version of Visual Basic has it set up to be auto-sized based on the words that I put in the label and the size of the font. So we're going to undo that auto size. So I'm going to scroll up through my Properties window, and I'm going to go to the auto size property. When I click on it, right now it's set true for auto size. I'm going to choose a drop down box, and I'm going to set it to false. When I set it to false, you can see that my label now has added sizing handles, and so I can make it whatever size I want. So we're going to scroll down through. As you can see, my size of my label is 182 by 57. If I change the size of the label. Again, using the handles, you can see that that property changes here. I can also set it by also using the keypad to set it, hit the enter key, and you can see I have a more square label in my form. We're going to add new text to this, make it more interesting. So I'm going to go down to text, the text property. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to overwrite with hello world as 2 words. Hit the enter key. You can see that hello world has now appeared in my property label. So I'm going to then also change the text alignment. So right under text, I can change the text alignment. I'm going to choose middle center. So you can see that hello world has now moved to the middle of my label. Let's take a look at changing the font. So I'm going to scroll up to font. I'm going to click on the font that currently is there by default, and you can see an ellipsis appear. Those are the 3 little dots. That tells me that when I click on it, a pop-up window will appear and I will have choices to change my font. So I'm going to just choose a font off the list. I'm going to just change the font style to bold, and I'm going to change the size to 16. You can see a preview of what that's going to look like. Click OK. And you can see that hello world will change in the label itself. I'm going to change the color, so that is going to be right here, right under the font. I'm going to choose Control Text. I'm going to choose the custom, so that will allow me to choose a different letter or color. I choose red, and so you can see that hello world appears red in my GUI. So that's some of the basic functionality of adding a tool to your GUI. Let's run it once just so that we can execute it. I'm going to go up and I'm going to choose the little green arrow on the toolbar here. You can see it says start debugging. When I click on it, the program will execute. The pop-up window appears. You can see the hello world. You can see the 2 labels. We didn't change any of those properties at this time, but this is creating my first GUI project.